Hello, welcome back to Affaircare. This is our little series on our basic concepts. And just to kind of fill you in a little bit on what we've been doing this month, we have been going all month over our little basic concepts here at Affaircare to introduce you to our new program that's coming out in October, and that is 90 Days to Save Your Marriage and Save You. And to do that, we started off, I think it was on September 1st, with our very first podcast, which is 90 Days, no, I'm sorry, I love me, don't you? It's an intro at basic concepts. And on that one, we went over kind of in depth the different little, the ideas and terminology that we use here at Affaircare. So if you don't know, you might want to go back and listen to that one. It's a little bit more in depth. But today I'll just go review that here at Affaircare we envision the love in your marriage as a campfire, and then there are actions that you can do that will build the fire and make it grow. These actions, we call them love kindlers, because that would be honoring the commitment in your marriage. And then there are actions that you would do that put out the fire. Those would be love extinguishers, because they are neglecting to honor the commitments that you made in your marriage. And then all week, all month we've been going over these topics. The last week we were going over the steps that you can take to end an affair. So if your spouse is in the middle of an affair right now, you might want to go back and look at some of the topics from last week, steps to end an affair. There is no guarantee that they will save your marriage, so I'm just telling you now, we're not trying to sell you a bill of goods. But these are the steps that will most likely end the affair. Now, what happens sometimes is that the affair ends, and the steps that we suggest are the ones that are like, oh, this is likely to end it. But sometimes it's the kind of affair where a person has hardened their heart to the point that they are just out of the marriage. And even if the affair does end, they don't really want to come back. And there's, that's a marriage that you as the loyal spouse just cannot save. But sometimes the fact of the matter is the affair will be over and your spouse is angry. But in a weird way, we think that's okay, because a marriage can survive anger between two people. It can't survive adultery. It literally cannot survive adultery. So the adultery part has to end. Sometimes people will not end their affair. They have hardened their heart, and then the adultery does end eventually because the divorce is final. And that's sad, but it's what happens sometimes. So you do those steps from last week, that will end the affair. Then, yesterday we talked about the things that need to happen before you can reconcile. I call them pre-reconciliation steps. And this week we're going over the things that you can do to reconcile your marriage. So, yesterday we talked about, having no contact in place, transparent honesty, for both of you. I wanted to point that out too. This is it's not like the loyal spouse gets to be all sneaky, but the disloyal has to be all transparent. Nope. In the past, you two both sort of hid things from each other, and now you want to start a new thing. You want to start both being transparent with each other and letting your spouse see who you are, who you really are. And then the last part is both agreeing to work on yourself and on the marriage. Now, here's why I say it like that. I myself might have an issue that would be, it perhaps affects my marriage, but it's a personal issue. I need to work on it, whether the marriage is there or not. So you work on your own issues, but also sometimes the marriage is like another little entity, right? And it has its issues. So you would work on your issues for your own self and the issues that are with the marriage, which would be relating to your spouse. Okay. So if those things are all in place, today we're going to talk about the first, I guess, big step of reconciliation, and that is commitment. Okay, let's talk about commitment. Honestly, that is one of the words that I think few people understand. Let me start talking about commitment with this verse that is the verse that is like the foundation of our entire Affaircare, ministry, and that is Deuteronomy 23:23. Whatever your lips utter, you must be sure to do, because you made your vow freely to the Lord your God with your own mouth. Marriage is a commitment. When you get married, you stand before your family, your friends, and before the Lord your God, and with your own mouth, you make a vow freely to spend the rest of your life loving your spouse. And in marriages that have had an affair, that vow has been broken. That is already broken. Now the question is getting ready to rebuild. Okay? Commitment is so common in our daily lives that we almost miss, in a way, how important it is. We commit our money to purchasing items over time in the form of loan. We commit our time to the kids' soccer games, the church functions, the, going out with people. But what exactly is it to commit to someone? Okay. Here is a little bit of a definition. If you want to look in the dictionary, you're going to find concepts along this line. It's to obligate, bind, pledge, or assign something to a particular course of action. In our instance, we have obligated or pledged ourselves. I have pledged myself to my dear hubby. And by the way, I'm hoping in our little program that you guys will get to have a chance to meet him, so that'll be cool. Okay, commitment is actually an intellectual thing. It starts with a choice that you make. You decide to take a particular course of action. Commitment is also when you decide to continue a certain course of action. So, for example, in our marriage, every single day I wake up like as if it's a new slate. I'm starting over, and I'm going to choose today to continue to be loving. Okay. So, as an example that is financial, if you commit your money towards the purchase of a car and you've got a loan for it, commitment would then, in that instance, be continuing to send in your payment every month. Okay. Once you've sent in the payment, you've fulfilled your commitment. You get to own the car. Okay. So you kind of, it's a pretty common concept, but a lot of people don't think about it when it comes to marriage. Okay? And some people actually, as they think about commitment in marriage, what they're really thinking is that they're committed to happiness. Most of us are committed to to happiness. That's a pretty natural human pursuit, if you will. But it is a choice that you make and continue to act on. So you decide what makes you happy, and then you continue to, keep doing that. You could always choose to do something else. I mean, and that might look kind of strange to people, but by the same token, you don't have to do what makes you happy. You can change your mind, blah, blah, blah. But in marriage, it's the same kind of concept still. You decide to commit. It's a conscious choice. That particular commitment does have the vows, and you say them out loud, voluntarily and freely. So that's a formal declaration of the terms of your commitment. Okay, our terms in the United States, I think most of us would say that our terms are lifelong. The obligation ends with the death of one of the spouses. Okay, and the fact that it's pursuing happiness actually is pretty rational. So don't just say, oh, we can't be happy, or being happy is a sin, or anything like that. you are committed to what makes you happy, but what can cause problems is that it can contradict your commitment to the marriage. So, for example, you can see how they would rub against each other, right? Are you committed to being happy? Are you committed to marriage? Sometimes they don't go in the same route. Like, how do I say? Sometimes the marriage relationship or the spouse may not be making you happy at the moment. Okay? And one of the biggest causes of divorce and separation and that kind of thing is that dichotomy of like, here's the marriage and I'm committed to the marriage, but it's not making me happy anymore. Okay? When the paths, like the paths, instead of like going along together or like crossing and like this, they're going off in different directions. That's when the trouble is. Okay? And I'll bet you if you think back on your marriage, really, and you think back, what caused this? A lot of the trouble started when one of you started going this direction and one of you started going that direction. You guys are pursuing marriage like and happiness apart from each other, and that's where that's where a lot of the problem starts. So at the time when you first meet each other, the happiness and the marriage thing it feels kind of easy and it feels natural because the paths are going along together, and you're like, this is an easy decision. I'm happy. I'm going to commit to the marriage because look at it, it's going right along together. Happiness, you can't imagine it without the marriage because they go along together. But then we start going apart. Okay, so in the past, back in the 1800 days, this was less of a factor in a marriage like than it is now. So, for example, in arranged marriages, people would enter the marriage with the idea that, hey, the reason I'm getting married is to create a family and for the societal stability, not necessarily because I'm going to feel all smooshy about the spouse. They will provide a certain level of home and food for the offspring. You know what I mean? They entered that contract knowing that, and thus, in a weird way, it was a little easier for them to stay together because their expectation was not continuous emotional mushiness. Okay? This is one of the points that make the current method of getting married actually makes it kind of harder to stay together because people do expect, well, first of all, they think love is an emotion, and so then they think, oh, I've never felt like this about anyone before. I'm going to love you like this forever. Well, guess what? Then when the person starts farting on you in bed and has bad breath, and you just don't feel that for forever. But so it does need to be addressed, and the solution actually is pretty simple, and you'd be surprised. What it is that the answer lies in sort of a change in the what you're committed to. Are you committed to the happiness part? Are you committed to the marriage part? Well, that doesn't mean you have to be continuously unhappy. What you do is, first let's just identify what is it that makes me happy. Write it down, list it, think about it. And then you say, what can I do within my marriage to get these things done? The tendency is when you feel like something emotionally that's like negative, you want to go away from it. When you feel something that's emotionally positive, you kind of want to go toward it and be with them. So what you do is you want to kick in, and you sort of want to say to yourself, well, okay, so first quick thing, notice the emotions, right? If you're feeling, for the most part, the emotions are unhappy and kind of negative in your marriage, one of the things you're going to want to change is to change that dynamic. Okay. Now, so see how this kind of goes. Now let's talk about what emotions are. Okay. Emotions are like a response to some kind of information. Okay. Something happens, you process it, and then your emotions kick in as a reaction. Now, for me, I am, if later on we'll talk about this, the Myers-Briggs thing, I'm a feeler. And the part where something happens, The process it part for me feels almost instantaneous. And you notice I use the word feels there. The emotions kicks in, like here's the thing that happens, boom, emotions. I'm not really aware of the process it part, but it does occur. And if I try to purposely slow things down enough, I recognize, yeah, I do process it. And the process then results in a decision, and that kind of kicks in the emotion. It's really, really, really fast, and it's sort of like, has this happened before? What happened before? What can I do now? You know, some of these things sort of kick in, and based on, oh, this sort of thing happened before, and I was scared then, so I will probably react with scared now, because that's the way that emotions kind of come about. So instead of reactively waiting for the emotion to kick in and then responding, that's kind of knee-jerky, right? What we want to do is be a proactive person, and that's going to be a person who would make a decision regardless of the emotion. That means the decision is made first, and then emotions may or may not follow, and if they don't, you make another decision that would then change how the emotion is. So, okay, is this making a little bit of sense? So there's chemical changes. There are imbalances that people can have that can cause emotions to kick in and things. Like, for example, a perfect example of that is pregnant women. They have hormones kind of out of whack. Emotions can be a little bit different, let's just say. Because if hormones are, you can cry easier. Sometimes it's a happy cry, sometimes it's a sad cry, frustration, all those things. So we all know that you can have various chemical imbalances and things that will affect this process. But if you are able to rely on knowledge and on the decision that you make, like I'm going to proactively make this decision, then your emotions will be like steadier. Okay? It can be difficult to do it like that, but I'm just saying, if you're aware, hey, this is the way it kind of goes, then you can, well, I choose to be the kind of person who makes the decision first and then has an emotional response because of that. Okay? You can choose to outlast your unhappiness, if it's temporary. Let's say your spouse is unemployed. And you know it's going to be temporary because they're like a real go-getter and they're making a bunch of... So you're unhappy at the moment because you're poor and it's hard to pay bills and it's stressful. But you can say, hey, I'm going to outlast this. I'm going to choose to just outweigh the unhappiness temporarily. And then sure enough, you know, they get their job, things get going again, and you can sort of redefine your personal happiness. That's a proactive person. See, the reactive person is going to be, they kind of wait back, unemployment happens, oh my God, I'm unhappy, and they panic, and then the emotions are what's choosing them. Is that so you kind of making sense? Now, I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do. A lot of people, they put their commitment to happiness so high that even sometimes they may not be aware that their commitment to happiness is higher than their marriage commitment. So if this is you, if your commitment to happiness is so high that you can't, you know, and you're not willing to control, like, you know, to decide, I'm going to be a decision maker first and then let my emotions be a result of the decision I've made, I have to honestly tell you, I would not enter into marriage at all. If you're considering marriage, then I would say you've got to accept the terms that you're going to have to decide to be married first. Okay? Some people will try to do the thing where I'm going to enter into a marriage, but I'm going to change the terms so that it can be an open marriage. Well, I would say if you do that with your person ahead of time, you guys may agree to it, but your church or your other, you know, civil organizations may not allow 3-4 spouses. So, you know, if your commitment to happiness is the highest thing, I'd say marriage maybe isn't for you. If, however, your commitment to your marriage is higher than your happiness, you can decide that you're keeping your word is an honorable thing and be happy with that. You can decide that you are the kind of person who kept your word and can be relied on and be happy that that's the kind of person you are. You could be respected and honored by your peers and be happy with that. So that's what your marriage commitment is about. Many people nowadays have learned that happiness is the most important thing in their life. Oh, they deserve to be happy. Okay, and we've all been taught to regard our emotions as the way to making decisions. Like, how do I feel about that? Okay, I guess I'll do, you know what I mean? And in real life, it's exactly backwards. Exactly backwards. You make the decision, and then you guide your emotions to fit in with your decision, with your commitment. Okay? So, again, it's exactly backwards. People react, and they have, my happiness is the most important thing, but I don't feel at this moment, so I'm going to react. And instead, what we're saying is exactly flip it around. Be proactive. Make the choice first, and have your emotions, be in control of your emotions. Be making the choice, actually, of what you're going to choose to feel, too. You can change your preferences about things and start producing a positive emotion in your marriage. And oddly enough, when you start doing that, you start feeling happiness. And you're pursuing happiness, because what you're doing is you're modifying yourself to include your marriage commitment. So, what do you think? Are you willing to commit to it? I think I'm going to end there. Tomorrow, we'll be discussing forgiveness. And this is a tough one for some people, so I would invite you to join in. If you're getting something from these, I would please appreciate it if you would give us a thumbs up or share the videos, let your friends know. If you have questions, just write them in the comments to the video or to the blog. If you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher, we're at affaircare.com. And my email address is affaircare@gmail.com. You can write to me anytime. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.